Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Dream Life Loading Podcast, Season 2, Episode 31. I'm your co-host, Skye.
And I'm your co-host, Susan. How are you today, Skye?
I am feeling good. I feel like I have been gaslighting Mother Nature because the weather just keeps saying that it's going to rain every day and be like cold and awful. And I'm like, oh, okay. But then it's blue skies and 70 degrees. I'm like, we'll just continue. Like, you can joke with me. I'll know that you're going to actually do the right thing. So, weather is great. The weather this weekend was so deserving. It was absolutely gorgeous. So we had such a nice weekend with a lovely lunch, some wine, some horse racing. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like I like the weekends where we can like goof off more and like have the more like slow style. And then the weeks feeling so good in routine, feeling very productive, consistent, all of that. So I'm feeling like very well balanced right now. How are you?
I'm good. Our weather's been kind of playing the same games. It said we were gonna have scattered showers today. It is very sunny out and 81. So
Oh my gosh, it's hot.
I know Chris this morning was like, you should really take your lunch break, put on a bathing suit, and go get some sun. I was like, who are you? He's like, "I'm gonna have a little bit of low self-esteem. I think some sun will do you good." I was like, thank
Chris.
you. Thank you for acknowledging that. And then giving me a solution to it, not just telling me like, well, you're going to lose all the weight when the baby comes out. Like that's not how it works.
No.
But been our daily conversation. He's like, well, at least you get to like not poop it out. He's like, but essentially you get to push out a lot of the weight. And I'm like, yeah, that is true.
This is.
And
How
he's like,
was
I'd
your
have
baby
to.
shower?
It was so good. I actually just literally before we got on this call, I recorded an entire sit down video explaining my baby shower, going into
Oh,
all the details. And then there'll be like little clips from the shower and a montage at the end. So all of you guys can come and enjoy it with me.
oh, I'm so excited.
That was
It's one of
good.
those things like being abroad is not easy for a lot of reasons, but I think the biggest one is being away from friends and family. And I notice like the different like I get extra homesick when like my dad has a gig or like my mom's doing something special or my brother or then my friends. It's like that there's that other piece of it where like I missed out on Sadie's graduation last weekend. I missed out on your baby shower. And it's like, oh man, like you cannot be in every place at the same time. And I know like everybody understands, but it doesn't make it any easier. So I love that social media and technology allows it. So like I can almost be there with you.
And I want to make like I was going to talk about this next week, but we can talk about it this week. Sky went above and beyond to still be a part of the shower. She sent a gift the week before, which of course it was early. And she does the sweetest thing. Since she's been abroad, she will hand write a note and then her parents print it out and tape it into a card. Like just the family effort there is immaculate. So I'm so grateful for Lisa and Sky for always making this stuff happen. And she got the literally the most thoughtful gift for the baby. It is a peacock book, which I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast. I feel like we have, maybe
I
a
don't
little bit.
know.
We could.
Maybe, you know what? It would have been from the first video of the new
That's
year when we
that's true.
talked about your pregnancy. Maybe.
Yes. So we should do a whole episode on signs from the universe in
Yes.
itself.
Just in
But
general. Yes.
very early after, or very closely after I met Sky, I had read this book about signs from the universe, and I declared that my sign from the universe, if I was on the right path or something good was headed my way, was a peacock. And when I got pregnant, before I knew I was pregnant, I was seeing peacocks everywhere. And I had been texting Sky. I was like, something big is about to happen in my life. Like I'm seeing peacocks everywhere. Heidi Klum was a peacock for Halloween. Like it was wild. So we got the Peacock book, and then a Dream Life sweatsuit or tracksuit from Zara, which, if you know Sky, Zara is Sky's brand essentially. And it was just so sweet. It says Dream Life on it. Like we have another DLL girly in the mix, and I can't wait for her to wear it. It's so soft and so cute.
I I'm so happy that you had the reaction that I was hoping for, but also the reaction I had when shopping for these things is I knew I wanted Zara because every time I go into Zara, I have to pass the baby kids section to get to like the other clothes. And I'm always like, man, these clothes are so cute. Like I would wear these clothes. And I, of course, for your baby had to get something from Zara, and I did not know that I'd be able to customize it, but that was like sealed the deal. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like this
So
is so
I didn't
perfect.
realize it was customized until you said it when we were talking about it afterwards. I
Oh,
thought that
really?
you just happened to find this thing that said Dream Life, and I was like, what are the odds? Like, what? But no, it is so
It's
cute.
the
And you'll
same,
see
you know,
that,
my shoulder bag, like my
yes,
white that
yeah,
says
that says
SH,
SH.
same like customization process from Zara. Yep.
Too good. Too good, guys. I have no segue into this
Nope.
episode because we're talking about such happy, good things.
Yes.
But last week we loved learning about the chemicals in the brain and all of those good things for happiness. And Skye's best friend Sadie had the great idea of, hey, I loved learning with you guys. Let's do that format again. So Skye came up with the idea to do how like stress, how it affects your brain, how it affects you. So let's just dive right in.
Yeah. And it's so funny that I think it was Sunday I woke up and my ring does periodically update and it'll sometimes add like uh bug fixes or like it's usually pretty minimal stuff, but I noticed the update from this week said now that there's a stress tracking element, and that has been one of the number one things that people ask me if they're considering getting one. They're like, oh, I think I'm going to go with Aura because Aura does stress tracking and Ultrahuman doesn't. I was like, I get that, like whatever. They have an entire new feature for stress tracking now that tracks your cortisol levels and how to lower your cortisol levels and like routine. So that came in on Sunday and I was like, oh my God, so well aligned. So I've only had it for what is this, day 3 now, technically. And so I'm seeing a little bit of how it works, but I'm excited to like, now that we've done all this research and doing this episode, now going forward, being like, okay, it's saying I'm stressed. What, like, other than just like, oh, I'm stressed, like what actually went into it to cause that, now that we kind of have the background information on what actually causes stress. So just also aligned, of course, as always.
Two aligned. So good. Do you want to start?
So I I tried to go about this a few different ways. I was like, what am I going to look up? Because we had basically said like we were doing like the science of stress. Like that was like the overarching theme here. And I was like, where do I go with this? How, like, what am I going to find? So I narrowed it down and found 3 stress hormones: epinephrine, which is otherwise known as adrenaline, cortisol, and then norepinephrine or nor and noradrenaline. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but we all get what we're trying to say here. So I kind of divided my notes into mostly talking about cortisol. I definitely focused on cortisol, and then epinephrine and norepinephrine. I don't know if you did something similar.
No, I had, and I knew that when I was doing my notes, I was like, this is definitely not what Skye did, which was fine because then we have two totally different
Yes.
things. So mine were symptoms and more ways to manage stress based off of
Oh,
what, like, how stress is in your brain and then how to, like, essentially dissolve it. So
yeah.
I think if you start and then I
Yes.
follow, I think this will be seamless.
That's great. Okay, so cortisol is the hormone produced by adrenal glands. It's otherwise known as the stress hormone, and it helps your body respond to stress. So if you have very high cortisol, symptoms could be like you're wired, but you're tired. So, like, I think honestly, when we were talking with the whole teapot situation like a month ago now, we did figure out that it was probably most likely like a lack of dopamine. But as I was researching today, I was like, you know what? My cortisol levels might have been really high because I was feeling like I had all this energy, but I was exhausted at the same time. But then on the other end, if your cortisol is too low, you're feeling exhausted and your energy is just kind of all over the place. So you need to find the perfect balance of not too much, not too little. Like cortisol, we need it, we don't need too much of it. Adrenaline, as we all know, fight or flight response, increases heart rate and blood pressure, boosts energy, blood flow to muscles. So again, good, only in small amounts. Like you don't want high adrenaline all day, every day. Noradrenaline, released in smaller amounts, again, heart rate, blood pressure, but also alertness. So I don't really quite know the difference between those two. Didn't spend a lot of time digging into it because, again, 40-minute podcast episode, not a full college lecture. So I kind of focus mostly on cortisol and then the rest of my notes are like signs that your cortisol or stress hormones as a whole are too high, and then how to fix them. So I feel like that's where we can dive in together.
This is honestly perfect because I feel like my TikTok feed has been like cortisol just gets thrown around all the time. And I'm like, how much do I have? Like, what?
Yes.
I don't understand it. So this is so perfect because it has
Mm-hmm.
been something that's been, I have a running list of random things that I hear or see that I want to learn more about, but don't have time to dig deeper into at the moment.
Yep.
And that has been on the top of my list because I feel like everyone's talking about it. It can make you retain like water or fat.
Yes.
Too.
It's
So like,
it's so funny. I literally wrote down TikTok morning routines for lowering cortisol because it's all over my feed too. And I kind of look past it because I feel like sometimes on TikTok we get too, not we as in you and me, but as a society, we get too into like, oh, this is wrong with you, so you should be doing this. And like, there's definitely something wrong with your gut, so you should be doing this. And like all these things, it's like I am way too anxious to let somebody tell me what's wrong with me from the internet.
high powered enemas are a really good example of that. Have you seen that? It's like I got rid of my bloat with this high powered enema, and they're literally
Oh,
hooking
yes, I
them.
have.
I'm like, and they're calling it like a spa treatment. I'm like, there's
Yes.
no way, no way. Hooking up a
Nope.
hose to your butthole
No.
is a fun spa treatment. Like I can't.
No.
And I literally I spent an hour researching that alone because I was like, where is that hose going? What is happening? Like, I don't understand it. So
And
that was where,
to save you the research, it's doing exactly what you think it's doing. And it's
yes.
terrifying.
So after that whole research debacle about 3 weeks ago, I decided I wasn't going to look into this because
Yes.
I was afraid.
Yep.
So
And I was concerned that, and it still might be for some of these people, like I think if you are gonna, this is a tangent, but if you're gonna put stuff on the internet that says like, oh, here's my routine that like helped me lose fat, or help my routine that like lowered my cortisol, whatever, know what you're talking about. And obviously some of these women do, but let's just be
probably a
honest.
very select few.
Yes. So that's why I kind of have always skipped past them, but it was kind of not even intentional that we were talking about cortisol today. So now I feel like I can go into those videos and have my own research to then go and watch theirs and be like, I disagree with that, or okay, maybe that's a good idea, and kind of take it with a grain of salt versus like write down everything this woman on TikTok says, which also, to be fair, we are not experts in this. So you can take what we're saying also with a grain of salt, but we are coming into it with a mind where we're looking to learn versus like we're not here to give you a gimmick on like how to lower your cortisol level and drop 50 pounds overnight, because it's like
This
some
is
of the
not a
things are just
transformation.
absurd.
We're trying
No.
to lay a foundation of understanding to
Yeah.
like our stress levels.
And I think it all goes back to routine and habits for us. So, like, after doing the research last week on the four brain chemicals, and now it's like we're literally designing our 100-day program around ways to trigger each of those four chemicals. And this week, with talking specifically about stress, I know for me, as I was going through, literally, again, I understood what brain food is now, realizing the cortisol and hormone aspect of it. The reason that dark chocolate, green tea, which literally drank it today because of this episode, all of those things are good for your hormones, which is why they're considered brain food. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of connecting the dots here. So it's all about learning to then implement habits that are actually going to, like, almost like you're habit stacking your habits. Like if I'm going to have caffeine, why not let it be green tea? Because that's going to benefit my brain and give me, so habit stacking to improve, all to improve.
Absolutely.
Okay, dive in. I'll follow
Dive in.
you.
So I'm gonna butcher this word. My essential understanding of stress was the Amy Goldala. I don't know how to say that. Said it's the control center of your brain sends
Mm-hmm.
distress signals to your
Oh,
nervous
the
system.
the amygdala.
Amygdala. Thank you.
Is that what it says?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Amy G. Dalla is how it's pronounced.
Yes.
How it's
Amygdala.
so amygdala. Thank you. So like I said, control center sends distress signals to your nervous system, and then that's how your body reacts. So there's three ways that your body can react. Your physical body's going to react, your mind's going to react, and your soul's going to react to stress. So these are, I broke it into categories and I'll just go through ways that you can alleviate stress for each category.
Love it.
So for your body, alleviating stress is getting healthy sleep, moving your body, nutrients, deep breathing, listening to music, taking a bath, cold showers, and hugs, which
Yep.
makes sense. So it's
It's
all the
so
things
ironic.
I
Exactly.
know. Everything we were talking about last week that can create happiness, but can also de escalate stress. And then also, in that same vein, if you need to instantly alleviate stress, you can do breathing exercises, you can watch something funny, you can try aromatherapy, you can step away from your environment.
Yep.
So if you're feeling really stressed, I know if you work from home, this is for me something that I have found myself getting into. If I feel stress coming on, I'll do any one of those things, but usually just getting up, leaving my
Yes.
desk, coming back 5 minutes later, like you can just feel like you can take a deep breath after. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's all.
Yep.
And then short term, so if you have a little bit longer of a time, it's not instant gratification, but short term relief, you can go for a walk, you can journal, you can practice meditation, or you can play music.
Mm-hmm.
And then long term is making time for leisure and self care, taking time to exercise, and eating whole foods. So it's essentially that same list, just broken down into time management
Yeah.
categories, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So to alleviate stress from your mind, you can talk about it, you can journal. Time management and time priorities were like the number one thing I was finding from Harvard to Pinterest, like across the board. It was like, learn how to time manage and you're not going to feel as stressed, which makes sense because you're in control of your time. And I think
Yep.
stress, you start to feel stress and then you feel completely out of control. And so just kind of like focusing in on one thing you can control is huge.
Yep.
Again, kind of in the same vein of as that is taking big tasks and breaking it into smaller steps. I think like a little three priority to do list is a great way of starting something like that. Like, don't add anything else to your list. Like, when it gets really long, it can get overwhelming. Three things. That
Yep.
is it. Or start with one thing, like the one thing you have to do, and that's all you need to prioritize and focus your energy on.
Yes.
Asking for help and therapy,
Yep.
which are two things that are arguably like I guess the hardest on that list, either resource wise or like pride wise. I know
Yeah.
I asking for help, but that will alleviate stress and you
Yep.
always feel. And then the last category is soul. And these ones I found honestly the most interesting because they're things that like we do, but you don't think of like the purpose or why you're doing them. So soul is positive self-talk, which does make sense because when you're stressed, you're spiraling,
Yep.
you can lose control of your thoughts, and then the negativity just swoops in. Saying no. And this one also had like say no and practice saying no. So if you
Yeah.
are currently a people pleaser, practice saying no in just small little increments. And then once you're like a little bit more trained in the area, you could just say no to whatever you don't want to go to, do. If you're being asked like to talk about someone that you don't want to be like
Yep.
engaging in that kind of behavior, just say no. And then
Yep.
that's going to alleviate stress. Because think about it. If you, this is an example, you're in a group of people and someone wants to talk crap about someone and
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to engage, but you do because you don't know how to say no, then you go home and feel guilty about it for however long and you have anxiety and you feel stressed because you're like, what if they find out I said this? Like,
Yep.
all that can be removed and alleviated and taken off your plate if you just learn how to say no, which is obviously easier said than done, but you're going to save yourself stress in the long run.
It is. And I'm almost thinking we have talked so much about people pleasing and like trying to learn to say no and not having the guilt after if and when you do say no to something. I'm feeling like the title just popped in my head, like the people pleaser's guide to saying no. I feel like absolutely we could do an episode on it because it's something that we both still have trouble with. But I think even from a year ago and especially 2 years ago, the way we've both like, actually, I don't want to do that, or no, sorry, that doesn't work for me. Like neither of us were able to do that 2 years ago, and now we really can practice that. So I feel like that would be a great thing to go into. And I know we both have talked probably on here, but also just as friends, about how our stress levels have gotten better. And I wonder, that probably is a correlation, is like learning the confidence. You need to build confidence to say no. It's not something that comes easily. Like, you have to be confident in your decision, in yourself.
And I feel like since, I mean, my child is not here yet, so I use this term loosely, but since becoming a mom, I am so fierce to say no. And I think that sometimes it's so much easier to advocate or say no for someone else. But practicing those skills of saying no for someone else, or let's even like your animal, if you don't have
Yep.
a baby or whatever to take care of, but being able to say no for that, you're practicing, you're using those skills. It's like a muscle.
Totally. Oh, and it's a great point that it is easier to not put the blame on somebody else, but for lack of a better term, you are putting the blame on someone else. And I know, like, I'm thinking back to like middle school, if someone's like, "Oh, do you want to come over
Mm-hmm.
for a sleepover?" And I'm like, "I don't, but I don't know how to say no." So I like text my mom. I'm like, "Quick,
Hey,
say
mom.
no." Right. And then mom's like, "No, sorry, you can." They're like, "But why?" I'm like, "I don't know, got to listen to my mom." So it is one of those things where we do put the blame on other people, even when we're the one that don't we're the person that doesn't want to do it. So I think it's a great example. And honestly, like, you're about to have a kid that you can blame everything on, which is fantastic.
And like and yeah, seriously though. But like Chris and I have had this conversation. Like when we first started dating, we kind of like, I mean, I don't want to say we like put a dent in our relationship by any means, but like we were saying yes to everything, like whether we were invited to everything or just things that were going on. Like we were just saying yes, yes, yes. And we were getting burnt out. And now, oh, well, honestly, I feel like since we've been married, we're a lot better as a team of saying no. And a lot of times, like one of us will revert back to like, okay, we have to go to this. And
Yeah.
then the other one kind of reels it in and it's like, actually, we don't. Like if we don't want to, we don't have to. And another thing as a couple that we've stopped doing, I'd say since I got pregnant, maybe a little bit before, but definitely since I got pregnant, is just saying no. Like,
Oh yeah.
we don't want to do something, we're not making up. We used to make up excuses. Like, we would think out the most elaborate schemes together, like plans to be like, no, we can't do this because X, Y, and Z. Like, you don't need to justify it. You can
Nope.
just say no and be done with it and walk away. Like,
And
and
people really respect that. I know I used to be, and sometimes I still am, honestly, where it's like, no, I can't go because I have this. And like, the made up work meeting, definitely have done that. Like, 100% will admit to it. But if you have somebody that you trust, like, let's say it's a group situation and you're like, I really don't want to go to this, you can make up your work meeting or have your fake friend that you have to call or whatever it is. I've had Susan, I'm like, you need to call me right now. I have to like leave this situation. Like, we all do it. And I think it's fine, honestly. Like, it is what it is. But
yeah,
if you get in the habit more of turning to someone, like, let's say there's one person in that situation and you could call up and be like, look, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, or like, I'm frankly not comfortable with this group, or whatever your actual reason is, just confide in one person. And I feel like you're going to strengthen that bond with one person. They're going to not only understand, but they're probably going to appreciate your honesty and be like, wow, this person really opened up to me about this. I'm going to do the same in return. Or, like, things snowball in a positive way when you have that open dialogue. And to bring it back to stress, you feel so much less stressed because you don't have to go to this thing you didn't want to go to. And you told the truth, and it's like weight lifted off. Like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I told the truth. I'm not going to get caught in a lie. I'm probably building a better connection with this person. Like, all the positive things with just owning up to the no.
absolutely. And that, I think that was the part that was weighing on us too. It was like we were still exerting as much energy saying no, but having this really long-winded excuse as to why we couldn't go.
Right.
Whereas you can just say no. Like,
Yep.
I think I'm being pregnant right now is what we use, which is true. Like, Susan's tired. Susan doesn't want to go. Like,
Yeah.
we're not, and
Yep.
we have
And
said no.
people respect it. Yeah, and people respect it because you're pregnant, and they should. But honestly, even if you weren't, and you're like, look, I don't want to go. Like, people respect honesty. Like, they might be like, wow, that's a little blunt, but they respect it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Next. Um, The other things for your soul, social media hiatuses, which I didn't even think about, but I was like, that makes so much sense. Like, no, there's no better place to fall down a stress rabbit hole where you feel like you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not whatever, than on social media because they're highlight reels and they're not showing the reality of everything. So just log off, delete the apps. And I know that when I feel stressed, I doom scroll because it's a distraction.
Yep.
And then I just feel worse after because it's like,
Well, it's a distraction, but it's also the immediate dopamine hit. Like
mm-hmm.
literally by scrolling, you are increasing your dopamine. So if you're doing that and you notice yourself doom scrolling, stop and be like, what am I trying to get out of this? And it's probably you're trying to get something a lot more fulfilling than doom scrolling, but that's the quick thing. That's like the easy fix, but it's not an actual fix. Like it's like a band-aid. It's not actually going to do anything.
Yep. The next one is being mindful, which is exactly what you just said. Like, be mindful in your actions, whether it is scrolling or if you're sitting on the couch with a stomach ache and you feel like you can't breathe. Like, identify what you're feeling and then see how you can alleviate that pain or stress
Mm-hmm.
or just being uncomfortable. And
Yep.
then the last one is acknowledge signs of burnout, which I feel like in today's hustle culture is so easy to ignore or neglect, but I promise you in the long run, you will be so much better off if you can identify those signs and symptoms and address them
Yep.
immediately. Because once you're burnt out, then you literally can't function. And then you're going to be even more behind than if you would have just taken the time up front to deal with it.
Yep. There were so many different things I wanted to touch on from your list. So what was the first thing? Mind was the first part.
Body, mind, soul.
Body. Okay, body. Okay, body. Um, what was I going to go with this? Supplements was something I found, and I think everybody should do their own research on it. But if you are feeling like, man, I probably do have like cortisol that's too high, or my stress hormones, or I'm just feeling too stressed, there are so many cool supplements that really do help with lowering stress and cortisol levels kind of because of that. So I would do your own research on it, but I know like ashwagandha, that's one that's become very popular in the last couple years. So there's a ton, but I wanted to touch on that. And exercise was one that came up a lot when I was doing my research, but it was interesting. If you are someone that has high cortisol or thinks you might have high cortisol, try switching. This was just what I was learning online. Try switching to lower impact workouts because it might end up having a better impact on your stress levels. I think oftentimes we're like, you have to go sweat it out. Like, I'm feeling so stressed. And I think sometimes like a super high intensity cardio heavy workout can benefit you. But if you're feeling like it's not just one day that you're feeling stressed, but it's like an ongoing thing, try switching to something very slow, like maybe Pilates, but honestly, like yoga or like some very simple stretching with like calming music, like just really turn it down and see if that makes a difference. And I know a lot of us are like, but yoga doesn't count as working out. Like, I have to be burning X amount and I have to be getting my heart rate up to this in order. Well, that,
Let's be
like, I don't, yeah, but where do we come up with these things? Like, why is that the way it is? Like, we put these things in our head and decide that they're true, but every single person is different. Like, you are 8 months pregnant right now. The workout that's going to be best for your body is not the same for your husband or for me or for Nick. Like for any other person, it's going to be completely different. So if stretching and doing slow yoga is what's going to fuel your body, that is exercise. Like, that is going to be enough. So I think going back to the
too.
whole mindfulness thing too, like, just take a minute and be like, well, what is my body actually craving right now? Like, if I am running 5 miles a day and I'm burning myself out, is that really benefiting me, or is it actually probably doing the opposite?
Absolutely. And I think just understanding too, like, you don't need to feel guilt around these things. I know that that has
Yes.
been, Chris and I were talking about it this morning. I don't know why I just default to it, but I've had the intention of getting up both yesterday and today, and I didn't. And I was like, I just feel like such a failure that I can't get up in the morning. Like, I used to be able to get up and it was no big deal. And he was like, Susan, you're 8 months pregnant. Like, I don't know how many times I have to say this to you. And he's like, I'm not trying to discredit your feelings. Like, I don't want to invalidate you. He was like, you are doing more than most people are that aren't pregnant. He's like, and again, you
Yes.
don't need to be comparing yourself to anyone. He was like, but it's okay. Like, you don't have to get up and you don't have to feel bad about it. And I think it's just a matter of breaking the cycles of
Yes.
got up at 4 a.m. for 2 years and I felt the most productive and good. And I probably would have felt good this morning if I got up and, did a workout. But at the same time, I was saying to him, I was like, I am the most comfortable between 4 and 6 a.m. Like, physically just getting into bed at night is painful. Like, it's uncomfortable. Like, my stomach is just pulling and it's just not, it's not comfortable. And he
Yeah.
was like, if you have 2 hours of comfort in the morning, he was like, just take it. Like, just
Yes.
unapologetically take it. And I
Yes.
put this stress on myself by like not get by in not getting up, I add stress to my life because I feel like I failed at something or I didn't do something right. And
Yep.
that's just unnecessary. So
And
it's like,
where's it coming
okay,
from? You
right,
know?
myself, I'm literally making it up
Exactly.
myself.
Yes.
And
It's sorry, finish your thought. Yes.
I was just going to say that Chris being able to identify it before I was is so helpful. And now I've been able to spend today thinking about, okay, how can I just make it be a better experience tomorrow morning?
Yep.
How can I alleviate this stress and this guilt?
Yep. And
And
I
that's something
love,
I'm really learning.
I don't even know if you realize that you just did this, but instead of being like, well, I have to do exactly the same thing every day and I have to do this, you just said, you were like, I'm just going to see what happens tomorrow and I'm going to do what's going to work for tomorrow. That alone is a stress reliever because you're taking those boundaries, you're balancing, and you're doing it one thing at a time, one day at a time. And you're just, let's see what happens tomorrow and we'll go from there. I'm feeling very similar. I know I've talked a lot about here, like with the guilt of like making sure you get up at the right time and like hit all your habits for the day and all these things. And it's something that I brought up to my therapist maybe a couple weeks ago. Actually, no, I don't remember. A couple weeks ago. It doesn't matter. A couple sessions ago, whatever. And I was like, I just like, I should be doing this. And she's like, you have to remove that word from your vocabulary. And if you remove the word should when you're talking about like your internal monologue, that alone is such a stress reliever to the point where sneak peek, we put it into the 100-day challenge because I was like, everybody needs to get on board with you have to get this word out of your head because we both do it. You're like, oh, I should get up this morning. Why? Who says? Yesterday was the first day that honestly I can remember where I woke up and I was like, nope, not ready. Went back to bed, had such a lazy morning, and I felt no guilt. It was like, this is what I need right now. No one is going to come knocking on my door being like, Skylar, you're so lazy, because you know what? I'm not. Like, I still got everything done. I did what was best for me. And it's such a relieving, weightlifting feeling to just do what's best for you and not worry about not even what somebody else would say, because honestly, no one cares what you do. It's what like the bad voice in your head is going to say. So just turn that off. So much less stress when you just turn off the should voice in your head.
Absolutely. I love that. Should we get into favorites though?
I think so. Honestly, I feel like there is so much with this research, and I'm thinking that in future episodes, we'll probably refer back to these notes because I know there's so much that I'm sure both of us did not hit. But for the sake of time and for the sake of engagement, I think we'll just keep going back to it. I feel like stress is something that we talk about so much, and now having this background info on it just gives us such a deeper understanding of actually how to address it. So let's move on to favorites for now. But I think we bookmark the science of stress.
Absolutely. My quote of the week actually fits into kind of everything that we talked about today. So it's eat like you love yourself, move like you value yourself, speak like you respect yourself, and live like you care about yourself.
I literally have goosebumps. Like I literally have
It
goosebumps.
was the first thing I saw on Pinterest, and I was like, I have to.
Oh my God. I that sums up like everything
Everything.
that we've been saying because it hit yeah, we don't even need to go into it because everybody's like, yeah, I understand. I heard the quote too. Wow. Love it. Yes. I didn't have a quote this week. I was just focusing on words, consistency, and determination. And I think you and I both have been very heavy on this, but I really was like, if you are determined to be consistent, there will be product from that. So it's almost like consistency plus determination equals success. That's kind of like I think, the mantra right now. And we've been proving it, we've been practicing it, and we've been preaching it. And you really can't ask for much more than that.
And reaping the results of it.
Exactly. Yep.
Doesn't get much better than that.
What's your favorite of the week?
My favorite of the week is the mess that I have in my dining room. So we
A good
had
mess.
a good mess. We had our baby shower and we were so showered with love and gifts. My entire dining room table is covered and it needs to be organized and like gone through. I now have all the tools I need to actually organize and like get down into this. And I'm so excited to do the organizing itself and like the nesting, but also record and show you guys everything. I'm just very excited about it.
I'm so excited for like the behind the scenes of that, you know, because and I feel like even if I were at the shower, I would be excited to see that. So I think no matter like who you are and what aspect of it, I think it'll just be really fun to see. I want to see all the baby clothes. Like I want to see all the little cute things she's going to be wearing.
It's so cute. I can't even.
So excited. Um, my favorite of the week is TikTok dinner recipes. What was it? It was after Nick got back from national camp, because when he was gone, I didn't really cook much. And then he got back and I was like, okay, like now we're in off season mode. Like, let's get into like some fun recipes. Let's do some new recipes. Cause in the winter, I feel like we all get into a rut in the winter anyways, where it's like, all right, pasta and chicken. And like with his games twice a week, it literally is just pasta and chicken. And I feel like I'm going to turn into pasta and chicken. So in the off season, it's fun to kind of switch it up. And I found two women online. The first one is at Callie Eats. I'm going to put these in the show notes so you can just go right to them. And the other one is at JC Allison Todd. The most fun recipes, and there's nothing crazy about them, but both of these women find like different ways to do boring, honestly. And it's awesome. They're like a lot of like chicken rice bowls, but it's like, let's do a teriyaki rice bowl with pineapple and avocado. And then it's like kind of a Hawaiian bowl. And so just a lot of different fun things that are so straightforward. I love the way they film their videos and it's just so fun. And I love new recipes. I think you need a change every once in a while with all the foods you're eating, even though it's like most of the same foods we're eating, but just in different forms. So I've been having so much fun with it.
We're so aligned and it has been like eating at me as you're talking. I just want to show you my draft from yesterday that I literally
Oh my God.
Our
It says,
dinner last
okay,
night.
if you're listening, it says easiest dinner recipes. Like
It literally takes maybe 5 minutes to prep. You bake it on 350 for 45 minutes and you have the most delicious chicken. Chris came home with that recipe from a coworker last week and we've had it 2 Mondays in a row now because it's so good.
that's
What
so
are the odds
funny.
of that though? Like what are the odds?
Honestly, I'm not even surprised anymore that we're like doing completely the same things. And the best part is that like we talk about so much, but that actually was one thing that we haven't really talked about. So it's even more funny that of course we're both in our TikTok food journey.
You
That is
guys,
all.
you know the drill. Like, subscribe, leave a review, leave a comment wherever you are watching. We're so thankful for you. Can't wait to see you next week.
Thank you for listening.